Delirium is the medical term for what's considered an acute confusional state. Usually affects patients' brains for a short period of time, and patients who are affected by delirium in hospital, compared to those who aren't, tend to have longer hospital stays, are more prone to developing hospital-related complications, and their recovery from illness can be affected by the delirium. Delirium affects about 1 in 3 people who are hospitalised. It occurs more commonly in people who are older, those who have underlying memory problems, those who have eyesight or hearing problems, those who are acutely unwell for any reason, or people who've had surgery. And it also occurs more commonly in people who have had delirium in the past, so it does have a tendency to recur.
Whilst I was on ward 6, the position of my bed was moved about 3 times to different parts of the ward, probably for convenience. I think one of them was because the spot that I occupied had oxygen, and it was needed for a patient who needed oxygen.
Some of the commonest causes of delirium include infections, new medicines or changes in medicines, dehydration, abnormal blood tests, or difficulty passing urine or constipation. Surgery can also be a trigger for delirium. And another thing which we have to take into consideration is moving wards or moving position within wards. So a patient who moves from one bed to the next is more likely to become delirious.
But I think it was moved twice again, and this I think helped with the confusion when I was waking up during the night. I didn't know where I was.
So you may notice a sudden change in the patient's mental status or their mental condition and their behaviour. It can often affect their ability to do simple things such as walk, feed themselves, and often interferes with their sleeping pattern. They often become very disoriented and are not sure where they are, what day it is, what time of the day it is, and they can often become very restless and agitated. So you may notice that they're fidgety and they're picking at their drip lines and their oxygen tubing and the other medical equipment surrounding them.
Peter looked after you yesterday.
No, I've got to go home.
You're in Wrightington Hospital. You had your operation yesterday and you're doing so well.
Let me out,
You're doing well. You're very
please.
safe. We're looking after you. Listen, Kieran.
Oh, to go
pass the
home.
glasses.
When looking after a patient with delirium, it's very important to stay calm. Staff members should always introduce themselves to patients, remind them where they are, why they're there and what's been happening. It's often very useful to have a familiar face, so a family member or a friend with the patient, which can provide reassurance. The other thing that is highly important is that patients have their usual glasses or their hearing aids with them, and that their hearing aids are in fact working. Another group of patients with delirium have what we call hypoactive delirium, so they become more sleepy and more withdrawn rather than restless and agitated. And these patients in particular have difficulty with ensuring they have enough to eat and drink, moving around, cooperating with the physiotherapists, and they're more prone to developing chest infections and pressure sores.
So they looked after you yesterday, are you? Ken, you're in Wrightington Hospital, all right?
Yeah.
You've had your operation. You're due to go home soon.
Look, where's my bus?
Ken,
Oh, yeah.
would you like to speak to Susan? You've
Yeah.
been shouting Susan.
Yes.
Would you like to speak to her? That's your wife,
I've
isn't
got
it?
yes, I've got to see
What I'll
her.
do, I'll go and get you the phone, all right?
Right.
And your tea's
Thanks.
gone a bit cold. Shall I get you a fresh one as
Yes.
well? Yeah, and we'll sit down. We'll get you. I'll speak to your wife, and then we'll
Right.
get you a fresh cup
Yes.
of tea. All right.
Thank
But you're very safe. You're in Wrightington Hospital, and you've done really well after your operation.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Some patients fluctuate between an agitated type delirium and a hypoactive type delirium. And in general, any delirious patient will be noticed to fluctuate throughout the course of the day. The other feature that's very common with delirium is visual hallucinations. So people can actually have vivid hallucinations or can misinterpret things that are going on around them.
The lights had gone out, probably around midnight, or so I thought, and trying to get to sleep, I looked over the bed covers and I saw a very, very tall nurse in a blue uniform, and she seemed to glide along the floor rather than walk, and she stopped at the foot of my bed, and it really, really scared me because I turned away and she'd gone. But a couple of nights later, she appeared again, and this time I had a torch under my bedclothes, which is a little LED thing, which gives a very bright light, and I shone it on her, and I couldn't recognise her. I looked in my records a couple of days later, and there it was. I just saw the writing which said, I stopped at the foot of the patient's bed to see if he wanted a hot drink to help him to sleep, but he took my photograph with a telephone camera, and that proved to me that I wasn't imagining things.
When looking after patients with delirium, it's useful to regularly reorientate them, so remind them of the day, the time of the day, and where they are. They often need help eating and drinking, and that needs to be ensured. It's also important not to disturb patients' sleep unnecessarily, for things like checking routine observations or blood tests that could be done at a different time of the day. They need to be helped to remain mobile, whether this is with assistance from staff or aides. That's very important. And if a particular medical cause is identified, then obviously that needs to be managed or treated along usual lines.